Hey y'all, it's Vinny, your host and editor of Leather Table History. After a little hiatus, we back. So let's get into it. The dinner for this episode was held virtually on Zoom, and it served as a follow-up to our inaugural dinner, What is Leather? Our TNG or the next generation guests include Autumn, Teddy, and Theo, and they were all at our first dinner. Our OGs for this round are Sir Raven of BLX Alternative and Goddess Rose. Our very own Azuli from House of Supreme Queen served as the moderator. For this conversation, our OGs took us back down memory lane as they reminisced on Hellfire and what the scene was like in the late 1900s, as Sir Raven calls it, while our TNGs examine what's wrong with the community as we know it. Like a thorough doctor, they diagnosed both the internal and the external challenges, and they even provided a prescription on how to move forward. So without further ado, pull up a chair and let's see what they discussed.
Now we can begin.
I haven't really been introduced to Teddy. Hi, Teddy.
Hi.
And I've seen Theo on your lives, and I've seen the kinky copywriter also on your lives. And
Yeah,
he's
Teddy's
really,
usually
yes,
in
I
the
know.
comments
Julie has tried
talking
to
shit.
sex traffic me and Raven several times.
But you have to finish the story. The story is y'all drank every drink. You stayed there for the remainder of the time, and you wore me and Ivy's dates to the gallery. So say the fucking whole thing. Don't tell the story. Y'all wanted to get sex trafficked, if anything.
And we were trying, but it didn't work out that way.
It
But
didn't
that's
take.
okay.
Yeah, it didn't take.
We called it quits after a certain time because, I'm a rose of a certain age. I just want to go home.
I hear you. You're talking bad shit, and then by the time it comes to the sex,
Be
it's
like,
like,
be
yeah,
like,
but
okay, see you youngins later. But yeah, so the
yeah, but
night,
Goddess Rose was talking about having Hellfire as her mailing address. Go.
yeah, I mean, back then all the characters were present. Everybody who was running the Hellfire was still alive. Lenny, Marie, um, the guy who was he was like the house submissive, Michael. He was the first person I ever flogged. I was nervous, and he was like, um, "Yeah, come on, just practice on me, honey. It's fine." I did down there. He was the first person, God rest his soul, was the first person that I ever flogged. But back in the day when I first showed up at Hellfire, it was in the 90s. I went with a friend of mine. Um, she had been, and I said, well, I don't know about this place. And so she said, well, we'll have a safe word. If it's feeling like it's too intense, just say Haagen-Dazs and we're out of there. And so it wasn't too intense. I did not Haagen-Dazs. I stayed and continued to go. Continued to go. I feel like I was there every weekend. And when I first initially came into the scene, I was like, okay, yeah, the only way I knew to come in was to be a submissive. Like there was no coming in saying, I'm a top, I'm a dom. People would be like, okay, kid. Yeah, that's real nice. That's real nice. You think you know who you are. Okay, okay. So I didn't come in that way, and I didn't recognize that I had these top leaning proclivities until a little later in the game. But every time I showed up this should have told me every time I showed up there, all the subs would be lining up when I come out of the bathroom. I walk around, they'd be following me. I should have had a clue.
Yeah, you should have.
But I was insisting that I wasn't that at all. But
Mm.
it was a totally different ecosystem. And I mean, once you started coming around and people started to know you, they looked out for you. Um, I don't know what it's like really these days for folks coming in. And somebody had to know you. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm gonna roll up and start doing stuff. It was like, who did you come with? Who vetted you?
Mm.
And even though they were public clubs, a lot of things were still underground. And it was starting to come out more and more. Like there was more parties as I started to go along, like early 2000s, stuff like that. But initially, it really that wasn't it. You kind of had to crack in, like you had to know somebody to like get
Mm.
in. And my first entry point was the Eulenspiegel Society, which is Test today. And when I showed
It
up,
was test before. It was
yeah,
test
but I,
before.
yeah, but people don't know it was called, that what it
Oh, that
stands
is
for.
School and Spiegel. Right,
Yeah,
right.
the
You're right.
Eulenspiegel
Yeah.
Society, which was started by two male subs, and they were still around. They were not quite completely like old like the two guys from the Muppets, but they were up there, they were up there in age. Um, and it was interesting to hear their stories and find out what it was like for them when they came in. And I think somebody's about to bust in here because I live with 20,000 people and my family just has no respect for my space. So I may have to put myself on mute. But anyway, so I went on several tangents, but back to Hellfire. It was it was grimy. It wasn't. I wouldn't say that you'd want to eat a sandwich in there. You know.
Mm, mm.
They
That was
had a piss
nasty.
room. I mean, like it was just like they
Mm,
had a trough in there that sometimes people would just be laying in it. Like.
mm,
Like, not my thing. But that was, hey, listen, it was free and open. There was a guy who chained himself to the post in the middle of the room and he would just
mm.
scrabble around on the floor and just be as dirty.
Yeah, that guy that was the guy that was beating his dick on the floor all the time, right? Was it that guy?
Probably. I don't know if that was him, but I know I almost tripped over him a couple of times and I told him I
Uh,
was going to kick him and not in a way he'd enjoy.
yeah,
But
yeah.
of course, then he was like, I love you.
Yeah. I think also with Hellfire sometimes, they like Lenny would like turn people away because
Yeah,
when the Brick Tunnel people started coming, that was
yeah. He wasn't big
but
on that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But if you came in there and you look kind of like if you could fake a little bit and you had on some gear, you looked a certain
And you had
which
some respect.
yeah,
You had some
yeah.
respect for what was happening in there. Like, we couldn't really go to the lure unless it was like a special night because those gay boys were like, we don't want none of your feminine energy in here. And
Facts.
we're quite rude about it. Like you couldn't have any perfume on, or you had to look like you basically had to be like not looking like a lady in any way, shape, or form.
You mean lady in quotes? Like, okay.
And I
Yeah,
was
because if
like,
you was
that's
like
cool.
if you was butch presenting,
You was
you could
fine.
maybe get in and do a
Right.
thing.
So I had to butch it up a little to get into the lore every now and again.
Yeah, you gotta butch it up, but not only that, you have to be kind of like ready to be fondled because them men be just touching you and shit as you walking. They will just be
Those
touching your
gay men were
crotch.
the worst. Like
Yeah,
you think like, oh, gay men? No, no, no. I had my everything squeezed in them places, but then you wanna. It's like, oh, we're gonna get into a fight now. Uh,
mm,
but
yeah.
that's why Hellfire was like out of all of them was the most comfortable of the dungeons for me.
Of the dirty dungeons. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't go to the other one. What was that other main one? Oh gosh.
Well, there
Oh
was Hellfire. There was Allure. There was Paddles.
yeah.
Um, there was that a dungeon or that was a pro dom space?
Well, Lawyer Cache was the pro dom place.
Right.
Yeah,
That
which
was
I
a
did
right.
like. I did like.
Yeah, that
Um,
was nice.
but there was another club, and I can't think of the name right now. And other people used to go there a lot, but I never went there. Like Master Jim used to go there all the time. And I can't think of what. Anyway, it might come to me, it might not. But anyway, it was like further grimier. Like it was even more grimy than Hellfire. But it had its charm, its griminess. Like you'd walk in. I mean, you have to go downstairs into the basement area
Mhm.
and Lenny was at the door, and if Lenny didn't like you, you wasn't getting in. But if
Facts.
Lenny liked you, he was like a giant teddy bear.
Hmm.
And Lenny
Hmm.
liked me, so I didn't have a problem with Lenny. So,
Yeah.
well, once you got in, it was just like kind of the lower lights, it was just like
Hmm.
all the atmosphere in a grimy dungeon that you want.
Yeah.
Everything. They even had back rooms. that were like little pens, and anything went back. Anything went back there. Anything.
Yeah, it's
But
true.
but yeah, I mean, some of the best things
I
I've
think
ever
the only
seen.
the only place in Hellfire that had lights that was bright enough was the bathroom,
Yeah, yeah.
and it didn't have a door, so
Well, the women's bathroom did. The
Yeah,
women's
right. But
bathroom did. The men's bathroom didn't. And that one, I mean, it looked like the lighting was kind of low in there, but in the women's bathroom, it was nice and bright because, you got to take care of things, and maybe you wanted to fix your makeup, and definitely
yeah,
our trans girls was in there fixing their makeup and getting their gear on so they could go outside
okay,
and work.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
true. All
got
right,
makeup tips in there.
I think they
true. How to sit on the toilet with a corset on.
I think Theo asked a really good question, which would be cool for everybody to kind of answer. Theo had asked a question about speaking of back in the day, I want to know how people would get their scene names. So it'd be kind of cool how if you could start, and then maybe if anybody else wants to talk about how they got their scene name. I don't think we talked about that last time, right? Um, maybe we can include other folks and hop in and start there.
You want? I've been talking a lot. I don't want to step all over anybody, but I can continue. I gave my scene name to myself. I was trying to come up with first I when I first entered the scene, it was on CompuServe. And then I know CompuServe, we were talking way back. And then everybody migrated to AOL. And
Hmm.
then when I migrated to AOL and I saw everybody had these names, like everybody had a handle. And I was like, well, I can't just go in there as L. Like that's kind of boring and nobody really cared about that. So I was like, well, what do I like? What's something I think is edgy? And so my handle was BLKROZES, Black Roses. And then that became a little unwieldy to say in person when it was time to go to Munches. So I just shortened it down. Everybody else just shortened it down to Rose. And, so I was fine for a while. And then when my journey progressed and I was figuring out who I was, and I was in more of a top space, Goddess was very popular, like to have on your handle. So I became Goddess Rose. And if you hear somebody call me Goddess Rose, they've known me for a long time. Like the Raven over there.
It's true. It's true. I think that the question's really good, but my thing is, I'll tell how I got my scene name, but I think that um, fortunately or unfortunately, people don't use scene names where we did where for protection, right? So a scene name is for protection.
Yeah.
If you have a job and the fact that y'all have like the internet and y'all put everything on the internet, baby, like I have a burner account. I got so like, but it was really for protection,
Yeah.
right? Like, people can lose their jobs, lose their kids, it could be very dangerous. So we had scene names for those reasons, and especially if you were Black, because please don't think that there was a plethora of Black people back in the 90s that you know what I'm saying? Like we all could have been in trouble, but we also have to realize that Black people had more at stake at being, like targeted for things or whatever. And so scene names were the thing. So now when I see people, I'm like, what's your scene name? They're like, well, my name is X, Y, and Z. I'm like, but what do you use for like, and I'm like, oh, okay, girl. But anyway, so when I came out in the public scene, my handle was Lady Raven,
Mhm.
right? And that was a play on words or a little thing in my head along with the person that was serving me because I'm such a tomboy. They thought it was so funny that I would be a lady. And so that's what it was. And then later on, I realized that I could be in a course. Actually, this happened at a party that I was at with Mistress Mir. Who else was there? Oh, what's that chick's name? I can't remember, but she was there, and we were having this party in one of the Pro Dom's dungeons, and all of the males kept calling me sir. And I kept thinking, well, I'm in this fucking corset. You know what I'm saying? Like my tits are up to here. I'm in this corset, I'm in this gear, whatever, because I have to, femme for play. And I realized that I was just gonna change my name to Sir Raven. And that's what I did. Because everybody was calling me Sir.
And some of us call you Daddy.
Alrighty.
I love
But
names. I think they have a lot of value, and especially as someone who has like a corporate job, like who seems to be on a fast track into this shit. I'm like definitely eyeballing that, and I'm very nervous. And I'm like, Theo's fine, but I also go by Theo at work, and I'm like, I need these things to never cross paths. I like my nice paycheck that's currently paying for school, but also like I want it to have meaning. So just like something that I like pick off a random name generator doesn't all feel appropriate either. So I don't know. It was nice. It's nice to hear about like everyone's experiences and how it's some combination of like something you picked versus in alongside something that kind of grew out of being in community.
Yeah. And I forgot about that part about it being for protection. Generally, that was the biggest thing because it was so stigmatized. I don't know that it still is to that degree, but we've all known someone. We both know. You remember Jack McGeorge, right? He had a very powerful job. I mean, I would see him on television sometime on Nova talking about things, and I'd be like, "Wait a minute, that's Jack."
Right, we just saw him at the mass meeting, right?
Right, but I would run into him by the UN because he was attached to the UN, and he was one of the people who went over and they were looking for nukes in Iran. But
right, he was an attaché or something.
he came clean with his boss because he knew that, somebody out there might try to use it against him. And so when he told Hans Blix all about it, he was like, look, this is my life. This is how I do. I have slaves. This is I have a dungeon, blah, blah, blah. And the guy was like, listen, I don't care about any of that. You're good at what you do. He was a musician's expert and was like, you're good at what you do. That's all I care about. And sure enough, somebody tried to out him. And his boss said, listen, that's not important to me. It was in the New York Times. I'll never forget it. He was like, that's not important to me.
It was in the New York Times. She was like, holy shit.
Yeah, but it's stuff like that that kept people from, because who wants to deal with all of that, and people were losing their kids and like all kinds of things just because they wanted to be sexually free. And in New York State, and I think probably the whole country, you cannot consent to violence. The state won't allow it. So even if you say, oh, this person has I told them they could do that. The person who, like law enforcement who showed up, or somebody else could launch a complaint and you still have a problem.
Facts.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not out there screaming it out the top of my lungs, but, at the same time, at one point in my life, I felt like the duality of it was a little bit too much for me. And just having to keep these things separate. And I tried to just come at it as me, who I legally am, and nobody knew who I was. Who? So I just went back. I was like, you call me whatever you call me.
Yeah.
And I also think that sometimes, at least for myself, as I got closer and closer, like towards being in my profession more, I stripped away some things from when it came, like, not to work. I'm not like walking into work or whatever. But like Lady Sabrina knows where I work, whatever. She came into my job and I introduced her as Lady Sabrina, not, like, you know what I'm saying? And so those coworkers still call her that when she goes into that library. They still call her Lady Sabrina, right? And because she calls me sir, my coworkers would call me sir. And so, you know what I'm saying? So as I got more and more, I think, into my profession or moving a certain kind of way, I could peel back some of those layers, but always remembering that I can lose my, someone could come out and say a certain thing and I could lose everything. And also the fact that I think I was, okay, so Master Blade was still here. Okay, I remember going to Hellfire one time, or maybe Paddles. It must have been Paddles. And I saw someone that worked at HR in Paddles, my HR where I work, and they saw me and I saw them, and we just kept it moving. Right? So when people are like, well, what if I see some, baby, if they see you in the dungeon, you got as much shit on them as they have on you. So no one gonna say something. And so once that happened,
destruction,
really,
what do they say? Mutually assured destruction.
that's
Yep.
right. So I was like, oh, okay. And 30 years later, I've seen this person. They've moved up in HR. They're the vice president of the whatever. And nothing has ever come of it. But yeah, that whole scene name thing is really about protection. And the fact that we didn't have the internet the way the internet is now.
Yeah.
Where every little thing is on the internet, and the internet is forever. So you might want to get a different name. You might, you know what I'm saying? Like, it is just forever.
Yeah, and that's like a big part of why it's been something I've been thinking about more and more, where it's like, it's that sense of like, okay, the internet is forever. You can't like, it's not going to be that same he said, she said. It's like, no, someone could just whip out their phone and be like, here you are. Somebody in the community could not be paying attention. I'm in the background of that photo. Somebody else tags my account. Now my work is seeing it.
And not even that. What if someone is mad at you because you did something to them within the scene, and they
want to expose my private information, dox me. Now they have access to all of that. So it's like there's so many more security risks nowadays, and that's not even considering like the current political landscape, where it's like the fact that I have a high-paying job is a privilege. The fact that that job allows me to do things like go to IMSL and go to these conferences, and also do things like support my friends and be able to buy them stuff and not have to worry about it, and know that like if I had someone who I was tight with and they were like, I'm in a bind, I need health insurance, I could marry them tomorrow, they'd have great insurance through me. Those are privileges that I'd like to keep because I know I can use them for good and for the community, but also part of keeping that is that safety of having some sort of separation. And it's like in terms of long-term ambitions, where it's like even as a title holder nowadays, you could like kind of be like face in, but like not in the same way that it used to be. That takes a lot more work, that takes a lot more intention. Like the likelihood that someone's really about to like image search your face to find pictures of you, if someone's that dedicated, they're that dedicated. There's a certain level of like, if someone has if there's a will, there's a way, but like you don't need to make it easy on them either. So it's like, how do you strike that balance in the current like media landscape and just like navigate that safety? And I think it's just uncharted waters for everyone. And it also depends on like your personal risk level, where I'm like, I'm very afraid of my job. I have no fear of my family. I'm like, if my family finds out, I'm going to look at them and I'm going to be like, you want to answer that question? you want to tell me how you know? And they're going to be they're going to be freaked out, and they're not going to want to answer that, and that's going to shut the conversation down. I can't do that with a corporate mega company that has offices. They're going to go, no, you're expendable. I can just fire you and call it a day. But yeah, shameless plug. Like, I'm taking name suggestions if anyone has any. But totally
I am also thinking that you're talking about title holders. Back in the day, they didn't have like magazines that did a whole spread. Like there was a whole spread in a magazine about IMSL. You know what I'm saying? And they were like photos, of IMSL. So it is, you're absolutely right. So title holders, I guess, could be a little, because it was so insular, could have some anonymity. But now you really, it might be in our local rag that we get at the bar, that you could only get at the bar. I forgot what the name of that magazine was that I always got from Rawhide. It was like a little gay magazine. And you might get something like that, but it wasn't like the Gay Times. It wasn't like Go Magazine. It wasn't all this kind of thing where you literally can have press clippings of your leather title year.
And even if it's not a big magazine, if it's an online magazine, that is immediately Googleable. You put that, if it's a unique enough keyword string, that small publication with only 10 readers a month is still going to come up as top page 1, 2, 3 on that Google search.
Yeah, and I like this because I wasn't talking about the internet. I was just talking about a magazine that's run off and put in like the center, or maybe in the gay bars. It was like, it wasn't online.
Well, the
But yes,
the internet is definitely a concern. Like I remember a few years back when I was in the Bay Area, and I would go to Folsom. I would, you get all kitted out. It's the Super Bowl, right? So you're looking good. And I would have people taking pictures of me. I have no idea where some of those people were taking pictures of me. One had the decency to say that they were a magazine in Japan and they wanted to take my picture. And I was like, okay, great. But there are tons of people who make money from taking pictures of folks at the street fair, and you don't know where you're going to pop up. You didn't sign any releases, but you don't have to because you're in a public space and you should have no expectation of privacy. But it still made me a little like, I don't really care for this. Or, especially like when we were in the women's area, the creepo photographers would like to come over and try to take pictures of people in the women's area, but they did a good job of like blocking their view and pushing their cameras and all stuff like that. But still, you don't know who's taking your picture.
Yep. And like you can wear a mask, but if someone calls your name, it's a video, you turn around and respond to that name. Now somebody else knows your name.
My friend lost her job because someone found her FetLife, which is wild because they had to be on FetLife to see FetLife, but they were able to find pictures of her at Weekend Reunion. And I guess she didn't say like, well, how did you find me? You must be on it. But when she, we work with kids, so when she came back into the school, it was like, you're out, you're gone, because of the pictures that she had. And I had like I teach college now, so it's a little bit different. And I guess my current page is private, but like my house page is open. But there's just certain things that I don't go to. Like I started seeing some of my students who grew up a little bit when I would go to like, what is that, Exotica in New Jersey, and I'm like, ooh, like, hey, oh, and I'm like, no, we see each other. But it's a little different from you seeing somebody at Pals. I'm like, that's my child that's in college now, and and I'm old. Why are you in college? But I had someone take a picture of me when I was still teaching sixth grade, and I was in full like leather garb. I was at Pride. And they took a picture and put on the internet, put me in a newsletter, didn't ask me to put me in a newsletter, because they knew that my chapter did not fuck with this person. And I guess it was like, oh, hey, I got Pearls to take a picture with you, and put me on the internet in a newsletter. And then when my president reached out and said, take that down, they said, no, I'm not taking that down. I took a picture. If you take a picture with me, that means you consent. And thank God nobody saw it, because I already had to deal with things teaching K through 6 as a queer teacher. Like the first thing people think, especially when I was teaching kindergarten with being a queer person, was that like I was a pedophile, I was somebody who hurt children. Like, so I've had people try to literally lie on my principal and get me fired just because, back in the day I would dress very femme. I would get the job and then be like, fuck, I only had one dress. What do I do now? And then after I took the job, it was like, well, you're going to get dyked. You're going to get dyked tomorrow because I don't have anything. And then when I would show up, it's like, fuck. It's like, but I signed my contract already. So I think even now, it's interesting thinking about scene names. I don't necessarily think I picked my scene name maybe for protection, more so of like what I was embodying at the moment, and like my alter ego, which then empowered me to be that fully. But yeah, there's definitely like there's a risk whether you in public, where you can go, if your job is privy to that. If it's not, people privileged enough to just be like, fuck it, I can say my name, it doesn't matter. But I do think about it now as like I'm getting through my PhD program, and I know that once I graduate, and even now, like they really want me to be pushing more out in social media and academics. Is like, well, what do I do now? Because once, I'm adjunct, you want to, kick me out, whatever. But then what happens when I'm like trying to get a tenure track job, or do different things, or have to build up my social media to really push up my brand and what I'm teaching? Then where does like leather and kink and all that really fall? Because we see people like losing their jobs for just being political, you know. So I don't know, that's something to think about. But I'm also interested. Oh,
Okay.
I just wanted to call in a couple of people who have not spoken.
I was gonna say the same thing. Go ahead, Daddy.
It's dinner time. Let them eat.
Oh,
I saw a steak pop up. I feel like Autumn's making steak.
If they want to speak because they hear, that's all I'm saying. They haven't been able to.
I have many thoughts. I mean, everything that you're saying is something that I think about a lot as a sex worker because I've like shown my face in all of my ads. And as things are changing, I of course am worried about being a sex worker because that is not legal, right? But then this extra layer of kinky, it's like, I don't know, I've been seeing people like change their servers of like where they even host the party information because some of these places are harvesting our information. And like I've been trying to figure out VPNs and stuff specifically for work, but then it comes in, hold on, how do I turn that off? But okay, never mind. I don't know how to figure that out. But anyway, yeah, so I think the internet poses a very different threat. I am really thankful for the internet. I go through this all the time as a Gemini moon because I'm obsessed with the internet, but I also am like becoming so aware of how vulnerable you are. We're like, it's creating the community, you know, we're able to then talk to each other, we're able to do this, that, and third. However, you know, we are all on the internet and all of our pictures are incriminating. We are bloody, you know, we're like beaten up, we're bruised, we're sharing our bruises, which, you know, I'm very into. But then when it comes to this crackdown of literally deporting people for supporting Palestine, it's like, okay, well, all the degenerates that they don't even need to figure out what we are into or like where we stand politically to hate us, right? Like, where are we going to fall in that? You know, so I've been seeing people like take up more encrypted things to then host their information. Like there was a party that happened that it was encrypted, and I think that's really important. Like I think at the very fucking least, we all want to share our photos because we all get a little high from like, you know, thirst trapping. But it is still, at the very least, we should be like having like more conversations about how to keep ourselves safe on the internet. Also, like one person I know commented under like this thing about incels on Twitter, and then people started like sending her death threats. And that happens all the time, you know, and it's just getting more and more intense as incels are gaining their momentum and, you know, the rise of fascism and all the things. So it is really scary. And I've honestly, I mean, I hope I don't stir any like fear, but I am nervous about how open incel is. Like how the address is for everywhere to see, how I don't know, these people are strapped. I wish someone was, to be honest. You know, these things where I'm like, anything can pop up. I literally biked today and biked in Philly, and I saw this like golf course that is all these white men that have an American flag staring down at me, and I'm like, do I need to fight these people? And I'm carrying a knife around me in Philly, in a place that's hot, like 50% black. So anywhere it can pop off, you know? So I don't know. I think safety is becoming very, very, very important to me. But to answer the first prompt, Teddy is literally the name I go by. And my work name, Avery, it was something that I wanted to, at first I was like, maybe I'll use that. But then I realized that it felt too messy, and like I wanted my community to know me by the name that I go by. But it's not on anything. And there was a moment that I wanted to kind of put it on my actual documents. Like I even thought about like changing it to my Apple ID. And maybe I'm just a paranoid person, but I got too paranoid and I was like, well, what happens if they can connect all of my stuff that I've been signing off as Teddy on, which is all things that is debaucherous and horny, because I've been in the leather dyke thing for a bit, not for a bit, but like, you know, this year most of my stuff has been under the name Teddy. And I'm like, actually, no, nothing else can have that. No other document can have Teddy. No, not even my Apple ID, because what happens if they go through my damn stuff and then they start connecting the dots, you know? So it is just a very, like Theo said, like extremely unprecedented time of how to fucking go with it, like how to exists with the internet, and like use it for all it's good, but also be very aware of all of the harm and vulnerabilities it's creating for our communities. Yeah. So
I have
I've
another
changed my middle
question.
name for that reason, so it's not my first or last.
I was going by my middle name when I was doing sex work for a little bit, and I was like, actually, this is insane. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I have another
Name is
follow-up
not
question
fun.
to that, but I'll wait until maybe if Autumn wants to say something, and then I have another question I want to ask because of what you said. So, and that's going to be an
Anyway, um, the name that I go by is also a middle name, but I had a Yoruba naming ceremony when I was born. So I have 5 middle names and I chose one, but it's not the one that's on any of my documents. So only the people who know me as Autumn know me as Autumn. On Instagram, I have, I don't know, I have like one photo of my face that, given the current landscape, I will probably take down at some point. It's not really important. But yeah, in terms of my work, like as an artist, anything is anything. So there's like a lot of privilege in that. There are lots and lots of dancers who pose in fetish wear or whatever, and it's art. Like an ad campaign is an ad campaign. Like, you know, fetish wear is mainstream in a lot of the fashion world. So if you're an artist, you get by with a lot of stuff, right? Like in terms of being employed, it's highly unlikely that someone could even find this thing with my face on it and go, we're not going to hire you. Like, if I can dance, I can dance, and like, that's it. Also, there's an intrinsic link between sex work and dancers. A lot of the people that I went to school with were not sex workers when they first started, but they ended up like working at strip clubs because they needed to pay for things or whatever. Ballet dancers back in like centuries past, especially when ballet dancers were kind of like, they were just soloists. A lot of them would have sponsors. So it was sex work, like that was it. So I'm safe in a lot of ways. And I'm in the process of creating a website so I can get off of Instagram in terms of advertising services. So I'm not completely and totally safe. Obviously, I'm still a queer person. I'm still a dyke. I'm still a freak on the internet. But there are no like tactile, like material safety concerns other than the existential ones, is basically what I'm saying.
I wonder, based on what y'all are talking about, if in your circle of people, or your, I don't want to say like your generation, but your circle of people, if you have conversations about that, because no get off my lawn. This is not my get off my lawn moment, but young people think they're gonna live forever, and that nothing's gonna touch them, and that they're immune to a lot of different things, and because of that, they may not think about something like scene names. So I'm wondering, do y'all have those kinds of conversations, or y'all just out there being the freak of the week?
Is that a raised hand? Are we raising our hands now? What's happening? I thought we were just going.
No. I just wanted to add something to what they were saying and then be quiet. And still, if we're going, still be mindful of like allowing other people to talk, because we keep going like then people can't all talk. Just to add to that part, like at the conference, the leadership conference this week, Ogun actually from House of Steel actually did a presentation about basically the clients that he represents who are in BDSM, right? Who get locked up or who get charged, and how to protect yourself. And it was interesting because New York I've been double booking because me and Sir talk about like all these boys in no service. But on the calendar, I was supposed to go to this. Somebody at my school was throwing this like leather politic thing in New York where they were gonna read and talk about leather as politics. And one of my friends had went, and they were saying about that, like being a marginalized person, and the risk of possibly playing with somebody. Somebody can come back, and they were in a circle of like white queers who were like, fuck that. Why would you even care? Like we can fuck whatever. It doesn't even matter. Like fuck the government. Nobody's gonna touch us. And they're like, well, you're pretty privileged to say that. So I am interested to see like what conversations people had, because even me going to Ogun's workshop, I was like, wow, like there's no, and I think Goddess Rose spoke to this, like especially in New York and other places, like there is no language that protects folks who are doing consensual kinky things. So people have like posted their bruises and then broke up and took people, and people have got locked up. And that's who he represents. Like, that's the only thing that he represents, but that's what he represents. He's like, that is assault, and they don't care if it's consensual. So he kind of talked about ways to protect yourself, but there's that risk. So I'm just interested because I was ignorant to some things. I'm just interested specifically because you're talking about like posting bruises, and I know my sisters will post their trophies and everything on the internet. So yeah, I'm just interested if like y'all have had that conversation, because I was like, ooh, maybe I told him, I was like, maybe you should come to like New York and do some shit when you up here for your sir.
Yeah, I'd love to take this one. I think like especially as like the youngest person both in this room and also in most rooms, most of the people that I'm talking to are older. And one thing I realize is like literally it's one of those things that to be true, but it's always so different when you are actually experiencing, is that like age is not a marker of like maturity or intention, or like it does not tell you anything about how a person moves. And like off recording, we were kikiing and joking about my situation, but like a little bit of that and of my decisions to be like, hey, I love these people, I still love these people, however I will be moving differently, having watching you gone through shit, is that like it is the ways that other people move was not in alignment with the ways that I want to move, with the safety and the concerns that I have and how I want to approach that. Where I'm like, I am a very cautious person. There are some areas in which I'm like, take the risk, absolutely full send it. And there are other things where I'm like, no, actually, that's not necessary. And your best interest should be what comes first. And seeing things that I don't personally value being put above safety was something where I was like, actually, this is your life. That's your decision. I can totally respect that. We can be cool. We can still be friends. That is not something that I want to be in my core circle, however. So you're going to stay in exactly the circle in which you are. And I think that's not a concept that's very popular among people my age as well, where it's like, it doesn't have to be an end all be all. It doesn't have to be, hey, you made this decision, I don't agree with it, now we can't be friends, because this is like, not everything is a moral failing. And so it's like, no, you can make that decision, I cannot agree with it. Our relationship doesn't necessarily have to change in terms of what we do with each other, but it will change in terms of how we think about each other. And I think there's space for both of those things to coexist. And like moving into this current political climate, like navigating that safety, knowing that people will protect themselves, and that if they need protection, that is due to like a higher level of concern and not just like a choice that was made, is something that matters to me a lot in terms of like who makes it to that next level of the inner circle, who's like my ride or die versus like who's like people that I'm in community with and care about, but will also be like, if it's between you and me, I'm taking a step back. And so I think it's a very hard balance to strike, that balance between like self-preservation but also being a part of community, but also like knowing when to pull back and when to move forward at the same time. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. I hope that made sense. I hope that like was not too convoluted. I'm trying to like respect people's privacy but also be like, explain.
Me off. That's what it sounds like. But I mean, I mean, it's kind of like reminding me of like, I hope this doesn't come off fucked up, as sometimes like how people move the COVID, right? Like some people
Yep.
are very serious about their COVID precautions and some people just aren't, right? And like, of course you can feel a way about how they're moving, but by the end of the day, right? Like you don't have to then have that person be your regular play partner that is not masking and you want to mask, right? You could see that someone's like, oh, I need to do what is that thing called? It's like a nest or something. I don't know. So there's a term that's like, these are the people that I know that they mask and they do the same COVID precautions. So we're in like the same little bubble. So like to then go outside that bubble, we do whatever testing, extra precautions, whatever. Right. So like people have that. And you don't need to make the people who don't then follow those precautions like your enemies, but they just don't have to be your close friends. And also, I mean, in terms of how our community does conflict, I've talked about this a lot with Autumn, but like I think because our system has gaslit us so deeply that like we are assuming that everyone who's like, oh, my bad is a mistake, we assume that they're really trying to harm us. And sometimes they just messy. Like sometimes they just kind of suck. And you can think they suck, but the rest of your community doesn't think they suck, and it doesn't mean they don't deserve friends, you know?
Yeah.
So I think having the personal boundary of like, I might not agree with your practices, but that doesn't mean that you're somehow a horrible person. And of course, if that person's practices are like actually fucked up, like you're not obligated to spend time with those folks. But going back to privacy, I mean, there's going to be parties coming up now that are going to be more like, no, who do you know versus public. And the risk of going to whichever party is kind of just depends on what sort of risk you want to do. So I think that it's slowly going to start happening, especially as people like, again, not trying to stir paranoia, because I know I'm a very paranoid person, but I think as like the crackdowns of people getting deported are happening and we realize that like our political stances will be used against us in this system, that like we might be moving differently online. Some people have already gotten off social media years ago, right? And then that actively interacts with like who, like, where are the spaces, like where are they going for their kink, their fetish, or leather. So I think that it is possible. I do agree that like it is a lot of like binary good or bad person, and that's kind of where it stays. But naturally we do kind of do these things. We just need to be able to accept that these are the things that we're doing, which is you can be in my community, but no, I'm not going to invite you to my close like leatherkin party. You know what I mean? Because you're not leatherkin. I wanted to see what you said. I also think we're gonna see more people going underground. See more things go underground in general, because I think we kind of need to, honestly. Like I was thinking about today or yesterday, I actually found this out like a couple weeks ago, but then it kind of circulated again, where this person that was creepy and shitty to me, that was in the kink community in Philly, has gotten called out again. And this person doesn't stop. Like literally, they don't stop. Their name is Blackson. If you know this person, right? But like does not stop, has not stopped, right? And I've been thinking about it like a couple hours ago, where I was like, the internet we're supposed to be able to have these blacklists, and yet it's not doing what it needs to do, which is then actually make sure that people know all throughout the country that no, this nigga's weird. And you shouldn't, and they're an abuser, like should not be in these spaces. But that's not, unfortunately, the information is still not getting to the people that it needs to get to the spaces that it needs to get to. So it does make me think of like, okay, well, what alternatives do we really have? Like maybe we do need to be just louder. And not louder in terms of the internet, but louder in terms of like giving a fuck about community and not being like, I don't know, afraid to call people out as like being weird.
I think speaking to that last part that you said, that was one thing that one of my sisters does like consent, and I was like thinking that because everybody has these parties and they're like, oh, this is my bubble. Even in New York, there's so many little bubbles. Like,
yes,
I'm in a bubble, other people in a bubble that I never have to see until sometimes I have to see them, right? So I feel like you have these little parties, but because we talk about like we had talked about goddess damn it. What's old girl's name right now? Hold on. I know my sister's name. Goddess Symphony was talking about like the big community versus a little community, that you have all these little communities and they don't talk to each other, right? So like, yes, you could throw something up on Instagram and yes, somebody might see it, like I saw that today, but it would be really nice if folks actually kind of like how, like going back in the day, that Goddess Indigo and Sir Raven were saying, like people knew each other, they spoke, they didn't have the internet, but they actually spoke and was like, that person's fucked up, they can't come in, right? So it'd be interesting if in our generation that like all these little like clicky bubbles that we all have, some leadership in those little bubbles actually spoke to each other, right? That would be what I would want to, that would be what I want to see more.
I have to say, my only worry about that is because people want to go to DEF CON 10 for a lot of things, people gonna be on them lists that shouldn't be on them lists. And that's where we can really, really have a problem, because somebody to be like, I knew someone in California who, when they stopped dealing with someone, all of a sudden that person was unsafe. And so they wanted everybody to know that person was unsafe. Now, I can't say what goes on in anybody's relationship for sure, but is everybody unsafe? Like, it's like, okay, so I think we need to listen when people say those things. I'm not saying don't listen, but also critical thinking, data, like how many people are saying this? Like if there's a lot of people saying that this person is this way, then maybe y'all need to listen, like, and so like I've been at events where um somebody was booked to speak, and come to find out they've had a horrible track record with how they treated people, and they were abusive and just like downright mm-mm. And when it was brought to the attention of the organizers, in some cases the organizers were like, okay, yeah, we're unbooking that person, and in others it was like, nah, they're popular, so we're keeping them. So it's kind of like that, how do we win with this? Because it's so driven by the truth, your truth, my truth, you know? And I'm not saying I don't want to believe people, because I've seen some horrific things. I've had interactions that were really unsettling with people or dangerous. And you want someone to listen to that. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. But I've also seen things where whole groups have imploded because there was some friction between the people. And then it was like this one's being demonized and that one's being demonized. And it was just a whole mess.
I think Autumn said they
Autumn.
have things to say. Stop dropping gems and then grabbing shit to...
Well, Autumn puts away a pot. I just a shameless plug for the BLX alternative page. There was a live with Autumn that I popped in for 20 minutes, and we talked about critical thinking and education and how that has been going away generation after generation. And it's like a particular concern for Gen Alpha, but this also clearly ties into that, and how critical thinking and knowing how to vet and knowing how to look up information is such a key skill to have. Autumn's back.
Yeah, so critical thinking, yes, also just the interpersonal skill. Because like getting really defensive about something and feeling like you have to avenge yourself is it's almost like you're a toddler. Like there's an immaturity there that's like that you learn to dispose of over time, that everything that somebody does to you is not a capital offense. You can be plenty hurt by something. Yeah, I have to completely get rid of you. I have to, everything that you've done to me, like we're rolling out the guillotine, and if you don't line up, you're being guillotined too. And I don't know, like in a rare compassionate take, because that's not my forte, but I think it's like healing. Like people are so so traumatized or so like have not gotten the opportunity to grow up. Like they're like stuck in this stage of like I'm offended and I can't let it go because it'll happen again, or um the whoever comes after this will do the same thing to me, or like everybody has to know that I was mistreated. And so you're kind of, instead of like working through your feelings and maybe realizing that like people are people and people hurt each other, you know, whether you're compatible or not, like people hurt each other or whatever. It's like it's, and then it gets I'm sorry, by the way, I'm on my period and the brain fog is so real. I'm like having a hot flash like every 5 minutes. I'm like, it's been a day. But it gets compounded by the availability of like therapy language, right? So when two people have a different idea as to something went, or as to how something went, very easy for the other person, very commonplace for the other person to call it gaslighting. Like all of those things are ammunition, and then what they do is that they revert you to a state of like, well, you've done this thing that the internet has told me is incredibly abusive and harmful, and so now everybody has to know that you're not safe. And so I don't know, like, how do we win is complicated, because I think it has to do with like the presence of whatever interpersonal skills we may have is completely and totally warped. And it's very, very hard to like get through to someone who's in that state and doesn't have like the presence of a whole bunch of people who might say unsavory things, or who might I don't know, who might be given to an opinion that you don't like, but they're still a part of your community, and not in a way that like, you know, you're just going to be over there because I don't like your opinion. Not necessarily. To still be able to embrace someone who just operates completely different. Like Zuli, I think about you all the time, to be honest. Like we operate in very different ways. We do. We do. We operate in very different ways, but I also can't help but think that perhaps a counterpart of a certain generation would have been like, well, I just can't, like, you know what I mean? And I truthfully, I don't know how to do that, because it's also it's pointed in the wrong direction. Because then when somebody really is harmful, and when you get multiple like accounts of a person being harmful, now you have nothing to say. Your vigilance is gone. You've got all these reasons to keep them around. You've got all these reasons to not hold them accountable. And so what is it? I don't know. I'm perhaps I'm just ranting now and I'm sweating. But I don't know what the solution is either, outside of like also being very insular with people that I know speak my language.
I think that what's going to have to happen is people are going to have to allow themselves a degree of vulnerability to talk about things, and some curiosity as to why someone holds a particular opinion, if that's what we're talking about. Now, everybody's not entitled to their own facts. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, instead of me trying to be in a position of salesman where I'm trying to convince you of my points of view, it's not so much of me trying to convince you of my point of view, but also I have no shot at getting you there if I'm just hammering you with what I believe to be right. Because we may not be as far apart from how we're thinking about something as we think. And if I can't get over myself a little bit to find out why you're over there, then we're never gonna meet. And I'm not saying that works for everything. I'm not saying it does. But instead of like, just like, oh, I'm going to jump down your throat because you're absolutely wrong. And, you can go to hell, It's like, instead of that, it's like, well, why do you feel that way? Like, why are you over there? Like, what's over there that's according to your values and something that you believe in? Like, why is that?
Well, but some people do like that's what I'm saying. Is like it's a good skill to have to advocate for yourself and to maybe, be a little bit okay, well, this has to stop. Whatever you're doing, this has to stop. It's like everybody, not everybody. Lots of people seem to have that skill, but are not picking on somebody their own size. Like they can point it at something that's really, really low stakes.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it's time to like really stand up and do something, then they're like, oh, well, I don't know, they seem like they're not really that bad. And like, but you're ready to jump down the throat of somebody who's done nothing to you. So what is that also?
Right.
Well, I think that also we were talking the last time we were together, we were talking, I gave the example about how I stand on my leather, right? And so something like even with Theo is kind of saying, but I'll use myself as the example. There was an issue that was happening with me, and a lot of stuff was said on the internet. And a lot of people were saying to me, well, aren't you going to say something back? Why don't you say something back? And I'm like, why am I going to fight on the internet? Because I am going to pick up the phone and call this person and say it to my face, right? Just why am I going to go to the internet with my grievances so that everybody who likes you can like your comment and all of these kinds of things and feed you being a keyboard thug, when if I don't give you any oxygen, you're going to stop. And people are asking me, what's going on with you? And is that person okay? Because that person seems like they're crashing out because I'm being quiet. I'm not being quiet because I don't know how to fight for myself. I'm being quiet because that's how my leather works. My leather is, let me call you. Let me, you know what I'm saying? If I don't have your phone number, let me find out how I can get in touch with you. And then we can have this conversation. But on the flip side of that is that no one knows, because I don't put stuff on the internet, that person rejected my phone call, blocked me from everything, but they're the ones who had all of this to say about something. And I think also going back to some of what Theo and Teddy was kind of saying is people who have a following, people who are popular on the internet seem to make these proclamations, and then everyone is like, yeah, girl, yeah, But then when it comes down to the real stuff, when we're talking about the community, they're nowhere to really be found. So I wonder if when we talk about community, as Goddess Symphony said, there's the big C and there's the little c, if there is a way, as Izuli said to me today, like there's people aren't seeing others model a certain behavior, right? And so I think I'm modeling a certain behavior. But if you're not interested in looking at that behavior because you want to be messy, you're going to discount what I'm putting down, right? And I have no stake in that. Like I can't be like, see what I'm doing? I'm doing this thing. I'm just not doing that. So I think that getting back into talking about community and talking about leather, if you say that you're leather, sometimes, as I said when we had our dinner, that means that I'm going to be alone because I'm doing what the young kids say, I'm standing 10 toes down, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes that may mean that I may not be, invited to every party or whatever. Not that I go to parties, but you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to be that bitch. No pun intended. No pun intended. I'm just not. Anyway.
There's also part of me that's kind of like, okay, you all are not going to survive. like I don't know, I like sometimes even if I look at my own like counterparts, I'm like you're not the lack of interpersonal skills and lack of like critical thinking, I'm like y'all are not going to make it at declaring that you're a leather queer leather dyke, whatever it is. I'm like, okay, but you all can't manage to oust people in the community who have done like actual harm.
Well, I think
Like,
that also, I think sometimes people, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask each of you, is that I see a lot of people, folks, they're very kinky, right? And they're using the word leather as if it's the cool kids. If I use leather, I'm cool. If I say I'm a leather this, I'm cool. When in all actuality, all I see is kink. And I'm not saying kink isn't leather. It is a part of leather, right? But it's not leather. Leather is, as Teddy said with the going underground, leather is, I'm seeing something in the air. I'm gonna create a document that is encrypted because I want to protect the community. That's leather. And if you have a problem with something that's being encrypted, that's not leather. That's just me. Yes, Goddess Rose.
For years and years and years, although I've been around leather and people can say that I am leather, I've never taken the label because I respect it to the extent of what it means and the commitment that is required of you when you say you are leather. Like I feel like I uphold the values, but I don't necessarily adhere to every last guideline. But I respect it enough to know that I'm not gonna like claim I'm down with the set, like like I'm in part of that gang, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not because I respect it and I know what it means. A lot of people I've noticed in, of late, but even before of late, just come in, just throw the doors wide open and are like, I'm this. And it's like, well, do you know what that means? Do you know what is required of you to do that? Like, and like you said about like the encrypted document, it's about like who are you protecting? Like, like who are the people that are really in your family? And lots of people have families, but it's like, well, do you know what that means?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about, oh, yeah, sometimes it's about like, where you get your dick sucked on a Saturday night, but it's
Mm-hmm.
that's not the only part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's more to it. It's about thinking of more than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not as much of that around. So it kind of bristles me a little bit when I see people come in and they're like, all of a sudden, they're everywhere and they are now the authorities on this thing
Mm-hmm.
called leather or kink or whatever. And it's like, where did you come from? Who are
Mm-hmm.
you?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have this internet platform.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that all of these people who follow them you even know. Like, have you met these people? Like, do you just see a couple of them at conferences? Like, what does it mean to you when you say you have this? What did you build? What did you build?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just see and I'm gonna sound like the cranky old get off my lawn person, but it's not, it was never like, I'm just gonna show up with all new leather gear, all new toys, and I'm number one on the top of this mountain. Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Who who are you?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of gets on my nerves a little bit, but people are gonna people. So I just I stay in my little world. I'm not necessarily interested and stepping into what is the scene today. Just holds no interest for me.
Mm-hmm.
Not even when I buy you $5 drinks at the bar and try to sex talk you? No.
I mean, I just don't see myself feeling motivated to. I went to IMSL for years, but I don't see myself motivated. I mean, the pandemic gave me an excuse to stop going. Let's just put it that way. In 2020, that gave me the excuse to just cut it because I was at the point where I was like, I don't want to go back anymore. It's not, I don't like it anymore.
Mhm. I do have a question.
Yeah.
Just y'all are talking about platforms and like just making some connections because I do see people who have really big platforms, who are not actually off the internet and actually sharing. We talked about like sharing, a lot of misinformation, and people, if they got a platform, they share it. Everybody who's like looking up to people like it, so they think it's truth. And you know, truth is so subjective, and like power is so embedded in what is considered truth and whose story. But I'm interested of like, with y'all too, if it was the same thing as far as like people with platforms, because as I was trying to find elders, it would be like the same two people, maybe three names being said. And I'm like, you're telling me there's only three people who are out there. And like now I'm meeting all these folks, as I'm going different places, and slowly I'm getting like different names. But like if you ask like, well, who are the elders? I can guarantee you it's the same, and you already know who the two I'm gonna say. It's 2 to 3 names, and that's it. So I mean, with y'all too, like, was there just folks on a platform and then everybody else didn't really get recognized? Because it's hard for me to find folks. Because
I'm not saying that we didn't have those issues because we did. You know, there were people who were just more popular and they had more followings. It wasn't necessarily the internet, but it was that they knew more people or they got around more. And so you heard of them more. But there's always been people quietly doing their thing in the, in the shadows. But yeah, I mean, who don't really want necessarily to be the one that's standing out front because again, back then too, not everybody could be visible. To be visible was to be it was dangerous. So people who could be out front, they had everything was out. There was no closet they were standing in. So that's why you don't see so many names because not everybody had that freedom.
That's true. And especially you don't see a lot of Black people.
Yes.
You know, you're not gonna really, and I'm not saying that they're not around, they are, but you're not gonna see them in that kind of a way. Like, and like Goddess Rose said, it was about who was popular, who was doing the classes and these kinds of things. I mean, there was a few Black people that were doing classes, but really it was really like, white folks doing those kinds of classes. Yeah, okay. And also because of the underground, having that underground kind of space where Black people could be with each other, the few, you know what I'm saying? And you can do a thing. But yeah, I guess, like now, when people say, and that's interesting that you're even saying that, usually, like, I said on the live, like people are like, well, I don't see the elders. Well, one, are you looking? Right? And where are you looking? Right? So you can't say you're leather, but you only go to kinky events. Nothing wrong with kink, but are you going to conferences? Are you only showing up where they're doing the spinning plates? And I call that, the spinning plates, right? It's like flogging and whipping and stomping and everything is, oh, look at it, look at it, look at it. But are you showing up to the conversations, the community conversations? Like I said to you earlier, BLX did 4 community conversations and no one showed up. No one showed up. We talked about sex. We talked about growing old. We talked about safety.
Yeah.
We talked about these things and no one shows up. So when you're saying you're looking for the elders, what does that mean, one? And when you say you're leather, but you only are at kink events, again, nothing wrong with kink, what are you saying? And to me, you're not saying much of anything. I mean, you're saying you know how to throw a whip, but my dead grandmother knew how to throw a whip. I grew up West Indian. That bitch was beating us all the time. You know what I'm saying? So, like, anyway, I yield my time. I yield. I yield.
No, yeah.
What were some of the questions that you had, Saraven, from last time? Do you have some of those? And I wanted to say to Autumn, once you called me out for not holding people accountable, I have been definitely working on it. And I have worked through, because I'll do it and I'll call Saraven and I'm like, my abandonment issues are coming up. They're like, you'll be fine. And so after that conversation, I definitely had more harder conversations. I think for me, it's not somebody on an equal playing ground. It's someone that I know has the same emotional intelligence, the same conflict resolution and interpersonal skills that I guess that is on my same level, that I feel like I can do that better. Like we can cuss, we can disagree, I don't have arguments, I just have conversations. And oftentimes like Goddess Rose talked about, language is important, and oftentimes we're both saying the same thing or saying something that is kind of an ingredient, but because we're so ego driven we don't take time to slow down. But since you dragged me for filth over that day, I definitely have had some more harder conversations with people who don't listen, with people who lie to get their point across, with people who might dispose of me, and was actually surprised that I wasn't disposed of, still realized they had no fucking skills, and it was even more frustrating. But I think for this year, once I had that conversation with you, once I had that conversation with Sir Raven, and then my partner's always like, I'm an Aquarius, I don't give a fuck. That I was like, why would I want fake people around me if I can't be 100%? Now I do protect myself when I'm having a hard conversation because everybody wants to fucking screenshot shit. I'm like, we gonna be on the phone. Like, just call me, we gonna be on the phone. Y'all be doing too much. But there is that level of still being scared of like, and that I'm still learning how to be situated in the fact of like anybody can twist a story. And I've seen even people in my circle twist a story on someone else, and I've had to have hard conversations of like, why would you say this story to community and try to ruin this person when that's not what happened, and you know that's not what happened because you're in an emotion. So I do feel like in one hand I'm learning of like, fuck it, if you're my people, then if we can't have intimate conversations, and that means conflict as well in a respectful manner, that you really can't be my people. But there is that level of anxiety too, that even when you speak your truth and have that conversation with people who don't have those interpersonal skills, that like you leave yourself vulnerable. There are people in community I don't fuck with. People bring up this person's name to me all the time. You would never know that I don't fuck with them because you know what? That's not my business. That was my experience. That might not be y'all experience. I don't bring their name up. Nobody knows that, and they're around me all the fucking time. And I encourage that other people had a different experience with this person, that I hope they had a different experience with that person. I don't get the same grace from everybody all the time, right? So I think it is I just wanted to say before we turn that like I heard you and I took the feedback, and I have been being more forward and blunt with people whether I'm going to lose them or not. I haven't lost anybody yet, but there's always that anxiety as well. So I just call somebody and they'd be like, "You'll be all right."
Well, what I'm hearing is that you had a conversation with all the fixed signs in your life, and you're like, "Damn, interesting."
Because you're like, we operate. I'm like, motherfucker, I can learn too. I'm learning.
Well, no, I mean that to say that like your impulse is the polar opposite. Like the thing that you would do without thinking is the polar opposite of what I would do if I wasn't thinking about it, right? So I don't even mean that in like a, I wasn't even trying to be funny. I just meant that like that night, like
I could learn to be on this side too.
well, yeah, not
Take
that you
kindness.
can't learn, but like your initial impulse is not to be like, well, wait a minute, but what you trying to say? That's me. I could absolutely like, and that doesn't serve me well all the time. Let me be the first to say that is not like, everybody doesn't need that. You know, it's kept me safe in a lot of different situations, but everybody doesn't need. A lot of people would benefit surely from me adding a lot of the skills that you have to the way that I operate in conflict as well. So like I wasn't even trying to be funny when I was saying that. But yeah, I mean, in this, I do think it's about vulnerability. I do think it's about intimacy, which is why to me it's like it's linked to healing in terms of like how do we do this, and not in a way that's like, oh, everybody's been hurt, so we're gonna like, not in that way, but like a hands-on, you're acting this way because and there's a closeness that you're skipping because you won't just say like, well, I was hurt, or I felt unsafe, or I felt like you were trying to fill in the blank,
Or I got it wrong.
or
Like,
I got it, yeah, I got
like
it
sometimes
wrong.
it's like I got it wrong.
I got it wrong. God, I overreacted. I like, and like I don't know that, like, especially when it comes to people who are not, who you wouldn't deem like your inner circle. Like, I don't know that we even think about that, to be so frank. Like, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that if you go to the internet, you know that somebody will agree with you.
Of course.
You have the backbreaking support of this random person who has no context.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that's a real thing. So when you know that, it's not even like a conscious thought. When you know subconsciously that you can throw something up on the internet because you do the same thing. If you see that somebody has had a bad day, or they're talking about somebody and their experience is so well dictated that it doesn't leave any room for you to be like, damn, I'm not really sure that that's what happened. Because why would you be unsure? Then of course you know that if you're so convicted in how you felt about somebody in community, that somebody will be like, damn, that person sucks, I'm never talking to them even though I live several states over. Like, you know what I mean?
And sometimes it takes time. Like there's been people when I was a lower level Pisces and I was like, you harmed me. It took me probably 4 to 5 years to get out of my own, like, oh my God, you did harm me. And that was real. Like this person did harm me, to consider their experience too. And I think some people don't know how to consider people's other opinion, experiences. Like they're just focused on them as well. And that takes like holding space for other folks. But yeah, we do it for the people that we really care about. So there's an option that you can do it, right? Like who gets that? And I feel like if you're a human being, and I think that goes back to being leather, there are times I have to go through that and give that to someone because I would hope they would give that to me. That is not somebody I'm fucking. And it's annoying. It's annoying sometimes. And it takes a lot of skill. But if my leather says that, I'm for community or that I'm about integrity, then like I have to do that. Right? I don't get to pick and choose and say I'm not going to do this for this person, but I can do it for this person. Like we're humans. And I'm not saying people who have like physically or like sexually assaulted, like fuck that. I'm not that person because I know that with some restorative conversations, there's like, oh, if someone rapes you, then you should be, and I'm like, well, you know what? I ain't doing that. So, but outside of that, I feel like yeah, it does take courage to have a conversation, especially if you know that that person's not meeting you with the same humanity or like race.
And I also think, it's easier to throw some shit up on the internet and then go about your day. Because when you live on the internet, we've talked about conversations that have nuance, but a person will throw some shit up on the internet and be like, deuces. And then everybody is like, you right. But it's like, are they though? But because they may have a following or whatever, and they throw something up on the internet, it becomes gospel. When really and truly, even I'm, because of the way my leather is, I would say as well, I'll be calling people like, I gotta say something. They're like, please, just don't. And the funny thing, and this is real, and this is interesting. So I had a conversation with Goddess Rose about something, and I said, well, I need to, and I'm gonna, and Goddess Rose was like, all right, girl. And that whole like, you gotta do what you gotta do. But I think it's a waste of time. And I think this and the third. And as we had a conversation, I already knew that before I even called her. I knew it was, right? But I just had to be like, I let it go. But I'm just saying,
I mean,
I'm being vulnerable.
Sometimes you got to get it out with your peoples. first. And then realize, you know what? Will this interaction move the needle in any way that's going to feel satisfactory to me?
Mm-hmm.
And given, people can always surprise you. I'm not saying that it might not, but you have to decide, do I have the energy for this? Do I want this? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes even when people have done you harm, and Lord knows I've had those people in my life, I have had to figure out a way to be okay because I knew they were never going to apologize to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, if I see this person, what kind of interaction am I going to have with them? Because if I'm looking at them and I'm like, that's giving them energy. So
Mm-hmm.
I make a decision if I know I'm going to see this person in community, well, how much energy do I want to give this? And so I don't give it a lot of energy. I can look right through you and be fine with you being
Mm-hmm.
there. And I'm not saying you need to be expunged from the spot because I'm there, or you should
Mm-hmm.
go because I show up. That's giving it a lot of energy I really don't care to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not saying like, oh, I'm brushing off when people do harm. It depends on the level of harm.
Mm-hmm.
Like if
Mm-hmm.
it's something that really has, like we were talking about SA and, things like that, you will get dust before you get anything from
Mm-hmm.
me. That's for sure. And you will get
Mm-hmm.
no understanding from me because what can you say to me like, oops, it was a mistake. No, so that's different. But all of that to say, like, it's the level of energy that I want to give this.
Right.
And
Yeah.
how important is that person's opinion on the internet, Mr. Stranger Man, that I don't even know? Mr. Stranger
I was
Man
gonna
number
say because
995. Like,
it's true. I was gonna say there was a time where I used to operate, and I have to go back to operating to that now because I'm doing a lot of things like on the internet or trying to bring some information to the internet. I used to live by, do I need to be right now? If I don't need to be right now, you could be strong and wrong over there. I'm good. So I have to like kind of like bring that when we had that conversation, that's what I started thinking about again. Like, do I really need to be right now? I didn't. I'd like to ask because our time is running out a bit. And having these youngins on the call, if you see yourself as a future leather leader, what do you think needs to happen to move the community forward?
Vacuum us all up and start again.
I'm sorry. You like burn it down. I'm sorry.
Vacuum us all up and you start over. No,
what do you need? What do you think needs to happen with the folks like you and Teddy and Theo, maybe the crew that you hang out with, your little C community that you hang out, that needs to happen to have momentum and move the community forward? How would that happen? What would that look like?
For me, I think that looks like a recommitment to legacy. I think that's been like the biggest theme in all of the conversations that I've had with people my age, where I'm like, the relationships that I value the most are the ones where we can have conversations where we're talking about the past, the present, and the future. If I'm only having present conversations, or if those future conversations are only about what is happening in that person's sphere, like, I'm like, we good, we cool, we great for the present. I'm gonna be in the present with you, but I know that my future is not with you. Because I think like, and I think is very both rooted in like how I view my own leather, but also how I view myself as a person. Where like thinking back to our last conversation and Autumn talking about like what you learned from your family, where I'm like, come from a family of community ass people. Like in terms of on my dad's side of the family, like they're not super like community organizers in the traditional way, but I grew up with 100% confidence that these motherfuckers show up for each other. And like even in the times where I was doubting that, what generally happened was I got older. I passed the age of 21. They said, we can have candid conversations with you now. And so I learned that those moments in which they did not show up were not rooted in them choosing not to be there. It was rooted in a lack of information. It was rooted in external factors that were outside of control. Where I know going forward that I have that confidence where I'm like, if something happens, I can call these people up. They will show up for me in whatever way. My mom is very, very active in her like Caribbean culture in the community. I was going to events with her as a child. I'd be like passing out on a chair in a corner of a room at like 2:00 in the morning as she's still talking to people. Okay, we packed those big blue barrels to ship back to the country. So it's like I saw so much community on both sides where even though my capacity for that has like ebbed and flowed over time, where like sometimes I have a really big capacity. Right now I have a really big capacity. Sometimes that capacity is like I got 2 people. Who's in it? Who's claiming the other spot? But it's always been that focus on I'm always looking to give back. I'm always looking to work with other people. I'm always looking to teach, to learn, to have conversation, to support. And so and mentorship is a part of that, learning about just like family and the leather family with like the capital L, capital F family with the lowercase f community in that way. That is something that I personally value and contribute to. And I don't see that as much in my generation. So when I do see it, I value it a lot.
I think, go ahead, Autumn.
No, you mute. I think Teddy's talking, but he's muted.
Yes, I was muted. I didn't realize. Thank you. I don't know if I see myself as like a leader in the leather community in the future, but I do think that a lot of what I want to see is, I mean, kind of what Theo was saying, like a recommitment, a sense of like genuinely giving a fuck. And I might be, for me, it's kind of the opposite, where like my foundation, I did not have a lot of long-standing relationships with community. So leather is kind of one of my first spaces there. And while there are a lot of things that piss me off, there are also a lot of things that I'm like actually feeling hopeful and inspired for. So I am not as scared of what'll happen. I think that, you know, whatever happens in the future, we are actively seeing the strong from the weak. Like that's already happening. We're already seeing like who's actually about it, who's only here for a couple years. I've seen that already. And I think that'll continue to happen. And I don't know, I just kind of I want people to like actively be like an active participation in the life that they want to live. So like organizing mutual aid, doing like active things, I think needs to be more of a focus, but I do see that more. But again, I will say more than other communities that I've been in. So I think that that's where my leather stands. And I think there are glimmers of it. There's a lot of fuck shit in the way, but the fuck shit will naturally kind of, maybe again, optimistic, because I did just talk about this one person who doesn't seem to leave. But I don't know, like just keep trying to recommit and also like be able to have nuance and I don't know. I want people to actually soften, even though some people are too soft. But I want us to soften between the right and wrong. Everyone is traumatized. I think everyone's trying to traumatize you. Yeah. So I guess a bullet list.
Yes, Autumn.
Autumn, you're frozen, I think.
Oh no.
Okay, you're back.
Oh, it's back.
I'm back.
Yes.
Okay. The softening for sure.
And you're frozen. Oh, reminds me of America's Next Top Model when Tyra was like, and take a picture. And you know what I'm saying? It's like, okay. But also, while we're waiting for Autumn to come back, because Teddy, you said that like everybody's traumatized. It's really interesting that people that are on the internet talk about older people. Oh, she's back. Go ahead.
Okay.
We
I
heard
was
nothing.
saying the softness good, because that's the third time I'm saying it. But also, trying to lead by example. I have a lot of trouble, and this is like developmental as well. Like we're all like in our 20s. But I have a lot of trouble remembering that people don't do things the same as I do. That sounds so ridiculous, but like I have a lot of trouble with that. Like sometimes I have to catch myself and tell myself that like, okay, well, some people just don't think that that's right. Or like some people just don't think that it's worth it. Or some people just don't think that they have a voice. Or some people don't want to be the one, whatever, to take the first step to throw the first brick. But I don't know. I don't like to see myself as a leader, but Izuli would fight me about it to the death. And I don't know, just kind of like trying to lead by example, and like trying not to shy away from that. Like people are looking, for a thing that they think is leather. And it's such an amorphous definition, such a personal definition that like we're all kind of like looking at each other to see like what it looks like. And like for me personally, not shying away from like the sort of implicit responsibility of a person who's had the privilege of like living out loud in a lot of ways. Which also means that in some ways I can't be as cutthroat as I usually would be, and that's hard.
The reason why, and I appreciate you accepting, I think the best leaders are not the ones that move with bravado, not the ones that say, I am the leader. It is the person who's just living it and being it. Especially because from what I heard, you take the conversations that you have with elders and you bring it back into your age and your community. That is a leader. You're not a leader doesn't mean, like I very much like to play the background. A lot of people don't know all the things that I do. I like it like that because who gives a fuck? I mean, we all do things like here's a cookie, who cares? But I do think that when I do meet people who are a little bit younger than me, and even my age, that it's like you don't get a choice for it to pick you or not. It just kind of becomes a thing that you're already doing. And because people gravitate towards you and because you're willing to speak your truth and push back when there's misinformation, you're not worried about being popular, but you are worried about how you, even you saying that, like, I need to be less sharp with my words. Like you are reflective, you are concerned about how you hold space with people and even like where you need to grow and like what you need to keep. That's a leader. And a leader is like, we all gonna win. A leader is not about I, it's really about we. And that's why when I see Theo, I see you, and now that I'm getting the honor to meet Teddy, I'm like, you guys kind of gonna be leaders. I mean, you're doing whether you might remember all these fucking dinners and Zoom calls that you had like 10 years from now, and you're like, I didn't ask for this. But like you're showing up, like nobody had to drag you to these last conversations. Nobody has to drag you when you're being kind and like listening and being inquisitive and curious about what people older than you have to say. Like nobody has to drag you, Theo, to write 10 pages when we go to the conference about, you know what I'm saying? Like what went well, what systematically wasn't great, like how somebody could be better. Like you're already naturally doing those things, and you're not gatekeeping that knowledge. You're sharing that with your inner communities. That is a leader, whether you want to be it or not. I mean, I like the fact that you resist the label. To me, that makes you even more of a leader. Because people who are just like, I got the biggest platform, you know what I'm saying? That's performative. And we know that our generation's like, a billion people liking some shit. For me, most of the time, it's the people who are doing it. They not on the internet because they live in it. They can't I hate the fact that I have to like run pages because it takes forever. But people who are doing it, who are on the internet all the time sometimes are not the people with boots on the ground, because you can't successfully do both as much as you could. You gotta pick one, or there's got to be leeway with one or the other. So I think um all of you will be leaders in different varying ways, but also sharers of knowledge. And I do hope that you go back into your community and talk about legacy. Even mine, I'm only 36. I mean, like, I'm not that much older, but even my generation, I tell them, like, right, know your history. Like, there's people this weekend that were just saying shit that was like, that's not true. That's not real. Why would you say that? All the time. So yeah, that's why I call you a baby elder, because I see that in you, and somebody saw that in me, and I was like, "Fuck you, I don't give a fuck." And then I just went about my business. I was like, "Oh shit, I'm kind of organizing now." Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, and I hope the three of you, as long as alongside of your tribe, I hope you do use the knowledge that you have and change what you want to change and honor what you want to honor, and keep it going. Keep it going.
Thank you, Azealia. On that note, that's a great note to end on. It's 9 o'clock, so we're going to hang up a bit. But our next dinner, we're asking, remember I said or mentioned that we would ask whoever came to the first dinner to recommend people for the next dinner. Our next dinner, I believe, is going to be about paradigms of power or power dynamics.
You made it all fancy and shit. Go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
didn't make it fancy. I own this book called Paradigms of Power, which is about the thing that we were talking about. So I pulled out the book. I'm
Wait, what book
I'm a
is
resource.
that?
I'm a resource.
Is that
Paradigms of
Raven
Power.
Caldera's?
It's Raven Caldera's book,
Oh, I never heard of it.
and it has different stories, interviews of different dynamics. And so that's going to be our next conversation. So what we are looking for is suggestions of couples
Or
that
thruples?
are whatever that is in a power dynamic, authority exchange, whatever you want to call it.
Up handler.
Pup handler, OP, MS, whatever you want to call that power exchange. We're looking for 3, maybe 4 couples, whatever that looks like, because it could be a throuple, whatever.
Or polycule.
A polycule. Okay, anyway, for our next dinner, which may be happening in May. So that's something to think about. We will circle back around. I really appreciate,
Other plug. You forgot the other plug, sir.
what's the other plug?
The round table, please.
Oh yes, and the round table, yes. And the round table that was in that email that everybody agreed to. Well, not everybody, but we do want to do the round table.
The anal plug.
And okay. Anyway, we want to do the round table with the TNGers, which came out of Autumn's part of the conversation, talking about how TNGers have siphoned themselves off from the community, away from the community in a certain way, and what that's done for them, and what's that done for the rest of the community. So we want to host a round table where we will invite people to come and listen to that conversation and maybe add something to the conversation afterwards. We're still working out
Well, partake. I don't like panels. Fuck panels. We're not doing a panel.
we're doing
But
panels.
just a round table is just like you all pick like maybe 3 or 4 other folks in community that you feel like are leather, and then you can have, it doesn't necessarily have to be like the TNG thing, but like, what is leather? You could talk a little bit about the TNG. Really, it's like y'all to have a conversation and to take what we're doing out of like this little silo and to call in your community just to have a conversation. Hopefully by that point, the first iteration of the dinner will be done. So on the other side, the oral history project side of Narrow, Liv, myself, and Vinny, the first iteration of like your pictures, the quote, all of that stuff. The snippets of, we're gonna pull snippets out of what y'all already did, because just to make it be more clear and accessible. And hopefully by the end of that roundtable, maybe we could have QR codes and people could have access to like the larger conversation, as well as some of the questions that we've been doing, so they can go back into their little C's and have conversations too. But one thing at the conference that I really enjoyed was this push between the bridge between TNG and the older generation, and that the older generation really did not model for the younger generation how to think, how to be radical, and how to organize, and all these things. So it was like the whole conversation, the whole weekend was about younger generation, old generation, like, and other things. So we would really like to support y'all having a space, and like we'll cover the cost, like you don't have to worry about it. It just would be y'all having your space and y'all organizing that. So if you're interested, I think it would be really dope.
Yes. So that's what we're talking about doing. We're still working out the kinks because in pure fashion of being in a relationship with Izuli wants to, just have the TNGers. And I'm like, they can sit up front. We can have the TNGers in the round table, but I want some elder people in that audience as well, because if we're talking about hearing what they have to say and then trying to give them the support they need, we need to hear what it is. But we're
gonna being in a relationship with Sir Raven, you realize that you got it wrong. What I said was that it would be cool if, because everybody's like, where's the elders? If we brought like 10 dope ass BIPOC elders that after they had their conversation, they can have like a mix and mingle. What I said was, let them decide how it's gonna go. So cut it out. That's not what I said. I said if they were okay with it, then the elders can sit by the wayside. That's what I said.
Anyway, I'll okay, whatever. You keep saying this is not a democracy, but okay. But anyway, thank you all for it's a dictatorship, baby. Thank you all for coming and talking and having this conversation with us. I